A poor cleaner is humiliated for refusing to marry the rich mayor's son, but a billionaire saw everything and did something that shocked everyone. Rate my story from 0 to 10 in the comments. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The clock read 5 in the morning as the 30-year-old cleaning lady pushed her cleaning cart down the silent hallway of the most imposing commercial building in the sprawling metropolis of Chicago. Her steps echoed softly on the polished marble. A morning symphony she had known for 15 years. The navy blue uniform, always impeccable despite its simplicity, could not hide the natural beauty that emanated from her decisive gestures and determined gaze. She had learned early on that dignity did not depend on the work one did, but on how one did that work. Each office she cleaned received her meticulous attention. Each surface gleamed as if it were the first time she had touched it. The small community of Cicero where she lived knew her as a woman of irreproachable character, someone who never bowed her head in the face of adversity. That specific morning, as she organized the cleaning products on the 30th floor, she felt a presence behind her. Mayor Thompson's spoiled son, an arrogant 25-year-old with a face marked by hubris and small, calculating eyes, blocked the entrance to the office. His expensive clothes contrasted with his vulgar posture, and the predatory smile he wore made her stomach clench in disgust. "I've finally managed to find you alone," he said, his voice loaded with repulsive confidence. The months of stalking had intensified, and she had already changed her schedule several times trying to avoid him. "I have a proposition that will change your life forever." The cleaning lady straightened her shoulders, holding the broom firmly. She knew this moment would come, but that did not diminish the revulsion she felt for the situation. "I have no interest in anything that comes from you," she replied in a firm voice, without showing the fear that was growing in her chest. "Marry me," he said bluntly, as if he were offering a favor. "You will have everything you've ever dreamed of. Mansion, cars, expensive clothes, trips. You will never have to dirty those beautiful hands with manual labor again." His eyes scanned her body obscenely, making her feel exposed and vulnerable. The answer came without hesitation. "Never." The word echoed through the empty hallway like a gunshot, loaded with all the contempt she felt for that man and everything he represented. The young man's face contorted into an expression of pure hatred. The rejection had wounded his inflated ego, and the mask of false courtesy disappeared completely. "You ordinary cleaning lady!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the silent hallways. "Do you think you're better than me? A miserable cleaning lady who doesn't even know who her father is." The words came out like daggers, each one calculated to cause the maximum amount of pain. "I'm going to make you regret this refusal for the rest of your pathetic life. You're going to lose this job, and I'm going to make sure you never get a decent job in this city again. I'm going to drag your reputation through the mud until not even the homeless want to associate with you." The cleaning lady stood erect, even with the tears of anger burning her eyes. "Do what you want," she replied, her voice trembling but firm. "I'd rather live in poverty than sell myself to someone like you." What neither of them realized was that the nearby elevator had stopped silently on the floor. Through the half-open doors, a 30-something man watched the whole scene with growing indignation. The most respected billionaire businessman in the city had arrived earlier than usual for an important meeting. But now, all his attention was focused on the extraordinary courage of that woman. He knew the reputation of the mayor's son, knew the stories whispered in social circles about his crude advances and predatory behavior. But seeing that demonstration of inferior character with his own eyes awakened something deep in his chest. The dignity with which the cleaning lady faced the humiliation touched him in a way he had not experienced in years. "You'll regret this, you wretch," spat the mayor's son before walking away, his heavy steps echoing his frustration. "This isn't over." The cleaning lady remained still for long minutes after he left, trying to control her breathing and the hands that trembled slightly. It was not the first time she had faced humiliation because of her origin, but the intensity of that man's hatred had shaken her deeply. When she finally resumed work, she did not know that her life was about to take a completely different turn. The billionaire businessman, known for his calculating coldness in business, but also for an unwavering sense of justice, had made a decision that would change the destiny of both forever. The next day, as she prepared for another day of hard work, the cleaning lady received a call that left her perplexed. The formal voice on the other end of the line informed her that she had been selected for an exclusive position, to work as responsible for cleaning the building penthouse, with a salary 5 times higher than her current one. "There must be some mistake," she murmured, still processing the information. "I didn't apply for any position." "There is no mistake, madam. The contract has already been approved and signed. You must report tomorrow at 6 in the morning on the 45th floor. The line went dead, leaving her with 1,000 questions and no answers. The penthouse on the 45th floor was a world completely different from anything the cleaning lady had ever known. Wide, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago that stretched as far as the eye could see. The corporate apartment combined discreet luxury with functionality, each piece of furniture chosen with meticulous care. In the early days, she worked in complete silence, familiarizing herself with every corner of that sophisticated space. The generous salary made her suspicious. No one paid so much for cleaning services without a specific reason. The question that tormented her was simple: why? Why had someone chosen her specifically for that position? It was in the second week that she finally saw him. The billionaire businessman entered the office at 7 in the morning, just as she finished organizing the living area. Tall, with broad shoulders and a presence that filled any environment, he possessed that rare combination of natural elegance and silent authority that only truly powerful people manage to project. "Good morning," he said simply, his voice deep and controlled. His eyes met hers for a brief moment, and she felt something strange stir in her chest. It was not intimidation, as she expected, but an inexplicable connection that disconcerted her. "Good morning, sir," she replied, looking down quickly. There was something in the way he watched her that made her feel exposed, but not uncomfortably. It was as if he really saw her, not just as part of the scenery. This routine was repeated for days. He arrived punctually at 7, always greeted her with respectful politeness, and she responded with the professional courtesy she had learned over the years. Gradually, she began to observe him discreetly, noting small details: how he always left an extra cup of coffee on the table, how his shoulders tensed when he received certain calls, how his eyes softened when he looked out the window during sunset. The first sign that something had changed came when he started making breakfast in the small gourmet kitchen. "Would you like some coffee?" he asked on a rainy morning, his voice casual but with an almost imperceptible hesitation. The question caught her off guard. In 15 years of work, no boss had ever offered her even a glass of water. I don't want to bother you," she murmured, not knowing how to react to that unexpected kindness. "It's no bother," he replied, already preparing 2 cups. "In fact, it would be a welcome company. Working alone can be quite lonely." They drank coffee in silence that first morning, each lost in their own thoughts. She watched his hands, elegant but with small scars that suggested a life that had not been just privilege. He, in turn, studied her posture, the way she held the cup carefully, as if it were something precious that could break. Over the weeks, these breakfasts became the most anticipated moment of the day for both. The conversations started hesitantly, limited to comments about the weather or general news. Gradually, they evolved into deeper exchanges about books, philosophy of life, dreams kept secret. "Did you always want to work as a cleaner?" he asked on an especially clear morning, genuine curiosity in his voice. She hesitated, stirring the sugar in the coffee more than necessary. "It wasn't exactly a childhood dream," she replied with a melancholic smile. "But sometimes life takes us down paths we don't plan, and we find dignity where we least expect it." The answer impressed him deeply. There was a wisdom in those words that many of his millionaire colleagues would never possess. "And what did you really dream of doing?" "Studying business administration," she confessed, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I've always had a knack for numbers and organization. But dreams sometimes have to wait for reality to allow it." He was silent for a long moment, processing that revelation. Every day that passed, his admiration for that extraordinary woman grew. Her inner strength, combined with an evident natural intelligence, created an attraction that went far beyond the physical. The first twist came unexpectedly. While cleaning his desk one afternoon, she accidentally knocked over a folder that was ajar. The papers scattered on the floor, and as she gathered them, her eyes caught some words that made her freeze. Investigation. Mayor Thompson. Irregularities. Corruption. Her hands trembled as she quickly organized the documents. When he returned from the meeting, he found her pale and visibly shaken. "Did something happen?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. "I saw the papers," she said directly, unable to feign ignorance. "The investigation about Mayor Thompson. That's why I'm here, isn't it? You hired me because you know about my situation with his son." The silence that followed was deafening. He approached slowly, as if fearing that she would run away at any moment. "Yes," he admitted finally. "Initially, it was for that reason, but—" "But what?" she interrupted, her voice loaded with hurt and betrayal. "Am I just a piece in your political game? A tool to get information?" "No," he replied vehemently, taking a step forward. "Not anymore. What started as a plan has turned into something completely different. You've turned into something completely different." The intensity in his voice made her stop. For a moment, she saw through the mask of calculating businessman and found something vulnerable and genuine that disarmed her completely. The sexual tension that had been growing silently between them for months exploded in that moment of raw honesty. "I don't know anymore where the strategy ends and where my feelings begin," he confessed, his voice hoarse. "All I know is that these breakfasts have become the only thing that really matters in my days." Before she could answer, the phone rang shrilly. The call brought disturbing news. In the small community of Cicero where she lived, malicious rumors about her morality were spreading like wildfire. Neighbors who had known her for years began to treat her with distrust and contempt. The mayor's son had fulfilled his threat, and the smear campaign was just beginning. The cleaning lady's life had become hell in the last 2 months. The smear campaign orchestrated by the mayor's son was more effective than she ever imagined possible. Neighbors who had greeted her for years now crossed the street to avoid her. The lady who sold vegetables at the farmer's market, where she had been shopping for over a decade, refused to serve her. Venomous whispers followed her everywhere she went. "They say she's selling herself to rich men," she heard in a conversation between 2 women at the bus stop. "I always knew that saintly pose was false." The words hit her like slaps, but she kept her head high, refusing to give the gossips the satisfaction of seeing her break. At work, the tension with the billionaire businessman had reached an almost unbearable point. The breakfasts continued, but now they were punctuated by loaded silences and furtive glances. He perceived her suffering, saw how her shoulders slumped slightly under the weight of social pressure, but did not know how to help without seeming condescending. "You don't have to go through this," he said on a particularly difficult morning after she arrived visibly shaken. "I can transfer you to work in one of my offices in another city. A new beginning, away from all this toxicity." "Running away is not the solution," she replied firmly, even with her voice slightly trembling. "If I run now, they'll win, and I can't live with that." The determination in her eyes impressed him once again, but also worried him deeply. The second twist came on a Tuesday morning, when all local newspapers simultaneously published a series of compromising documents about irregularities in the mayor's office. Overpriced contracts, targeted bidding, embezzlement of public funds, everything was there, exposed with surgical precision. The mayor exploded in fury. In an emergency meeting with his closest advisors, he slammed his fist on the table hard enough to make the glasses of water tremble. "Someone is systematically sabotaging me," he shouted, his face red with rage, "and I'm going to find out who it is." It did not take long for his suspicions to turn to the billionaire businessman. The connection was too obvious to ignore. The most powerful man in the city financially had the resources and motivation to orchestrate such an attack. More importantly, he had hired the cleaning lady that his son had publicly humiliated. The blackmail came in the form of a direct call to the businessman on a rainy Thursday afternoon. "We know it was you," the mayor said bluntly, "and we know about your unhealthy obsession with the cleaning lady. It's a very delicate situation, don't you think?" The millionaire kept his voice controlled, but his fists clenched involuntarily. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you do. And now we're going to talk about how to resolve this in a civilized manner. You stop these pathetic investigations, and I don't have to share certain compromising photographs with the press. Photographs of you two having coffee, looking at each other like two teenagers in love. Imagine the scandal. Business tycoon seducing humble employee. The threat was clear and devastating. In a society where appearances mattered as much as money, a scandal like that could destroy not only his reputation, but also all his businesses. More importantly, it could completely ruin her life. "You have 48 hours to decide," continued the mayor with evident satisfaction in his voice. "Either the investigations stop, or I show the whole city what kind of man you really are." When the cleaning lady arrived to work the next morning, she found him visibly shaken. The man who always radiated absolute control now seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "What happened?" she asked instinctively, genuine concern replacing any residual resentment. He hesitated for long moments before telling her about the blackmail. With each word, she saw her face pale. "He has pictures of us?" she murmured, the realization of what that meant hitting her like an avalanche. "Apparently. Photographs that can be interpreted in an inappropriate way." He got up abruptly, walking to the window as if he could find answers in the view of the city. "He wants me to choose between stopping the investigation or completely destroying your reputation." The silence that followed was loaded with tension and despair. Both understood the implications. For her, who was already struggling against malicious rumors, compromising photographs would be the final blow. For him, yielding to blackmail would mean betrayal of his own principles. "Stop the investigation," she said softly, surprising him with the calmness in her voice. He turned quickly. "I can't do that. These documents show systemic corruption that harms thousands of people. And I'm just one person," she replied, forcing a sad smile. "The math is simple. You're not just anything," he said vehemently, approaching her. "You are." He stopped abruptly, the words dying on his lips. "What am I?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The sexual tension that had been growing between them for months reached a boiling point. They were too close, breathing the same air, lost in each other's eyes. He raised his hand, almost touching her face, but stopped at the last second. "You are the most extraordinary person I've ever met," he confessed, his voice hoarse with emotion. "And I'm not going to let anyone destroy you because of me." Before she could answer, the phone rang stridently. It was her oldest neighbor, his voice full of urgency. "You need to come home immediately. They're putting up offensive posters on your door. The situation is getting ugly." The siege was closing in, and both knew that their next decisions would determine not only their individual destinies, but also whether the growing love between them would survive the approaching storm. The cleaning lady's house was unrecognizable when she arrived that afternoon. Posters with obscene words covered her door, and someone had thrown red paint on the facade. Neighbors huddled on the opposite sidewalk, whispering and pointing with a cruelty that she never imagined possible. The humiliation was so intense that she felt her legs give way. It was then that she discovered the third and most shocking twist. The elderly neighbor who had called approached discreetly, handing her a sealed envelope. "It arrived this morning," he murmured nervously. "By registered mail." With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside were documents that left her breathless. Deeds, contracts, certificates. Her small house, which she had rented for years, had been bought. And the new owner was the billionaire businessman. Even more shocking was discovering that he had done this weeks before the blackmail began, as if he anticipated that she would need protection. But the most surprising discovery came at the end of the documents. A full scholarship contract for a business administration course at the most prestigious university in the city, in her name, with all expenses paid for 2 years. The anger and confusion she felt were overwhelming. Running back to the building, she stormed into the penthouse like a storm, the documents trembling in her hands. "Explain this," she shouted, throwing the papers on his desk. "Explain how you bought my house and created this scholarship without me knowing." He was standing by the window as if he expected this confrontation. "You found out," he said simply, without trying to deny or evade. "You've manipulated me since day one," she exploded, the tears finally flowing. "First pretending you hired me by chance, then pretending to be worried about my situation, and now this. Do you think you can buy everything, including me?" "No," he replied firmly, approaching slowly. "I never tried to buy you. All I did was try to protect you in the only way I know how, through practical actions. Protection I never asked for. Because you're too proud to accept help," he retorted, his voice rising for the first time. "Even when you're suffering, even when they're destroying your life, you'd rather face it all alone than accept that someone cares about you." The silence that followed was loaded with raw emotion. They were close now, breaths quickened, eyes shining with unshed tears and repressed desire. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice broken. "The house, the scholarship, the job here, why? Because from the first moment I saw you facing that jerk in the hallway, you stirred something in me that I thought was dead," he confessed, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Because your courage, your dignity, your strength inspired me in a way that no amount of money or business success ever could." He took her hands in his, ignoring how she tried to pull away. "Because I fell in love with you completely, desperately, and I wanted to give you the whole world if I could." The confession hung in the air between them like a sacred revelation. She looked into his eyes and saw absolute truth, total vulnerability. The most powerful man in the city was completely exposed before her. "You're crazy," she murmured, but her hands stopped trying to break free from his. "Completely," he admitted, a sad smile touching his lips. "Crazy about an extraordinary woman who can't see her own worth." It was at that moment that the final revelation arrived like an emotional avalanche. "You want to know the truth about the investigations?" she said suddenly, surprising him. "I've been collecting evidence too." She ran to her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "During these months, using my position here, I documented everything. Phone conversations I overheard, papers I photographed discreetly, connections I discovered, not for you or against you, but because it was the right thing to do." The astonishment on his face was total. "You did a parallel investigation? Because unlike you, I don't have money or power to protect myself. All I have is my integrity and courage to do what's right." She opened the envelope, revealing photographs, recordings, documents. "This is enough to destroy Mayor Thompson and his son, and I don't need your protection to use it." The admiration in his eyes turned into something close to reverence. "You are absolutely incredible." That night, working together, they compiled all the evidence and delivered it simultaneously to 3 different newspapers and the district attorney. The dual strategy guaranteed that no political pressure could suppress the information. The fall of Mayor Thompson was spectacular and swift. In a week, he and his son were being formally investigated. The rumors about her ceased abruptly when the truth about her role in the investigation came to light. The community that had rejected her now saw her as a heroine, but the real transformation happened between them. On the night that the last evidence was delivered, after months of growing tension, they finally allowed themselves to physically express the love that had been growing silently. "I still don't accept the scholarship," she said days later, lying in his arms in the penthouse, watching the sunrise through the large windows. "Why not?" "Because I want to earn it with my own merits. I want to work, study at night, do what it takes to deserve it. I want that when I graduate it's because I fought for it." He smiled, holding her tighter against his chest. "And I'll be by your side during every moment of that journey, not as your benefactor, but as your partner. Equal partners? In everything," he promised, sealing the promise with a soft kiss. Months later, when she started college working part-time at his company as an administrative assistant, their relationship had found the perfect balance. He had learned that true love means respecting the independence of the loved one. She had discovered that accepting support was not weakness, but part of a healthy relationship. The transformation of both was complete. The billionaire businessman, formerly cold and calculating, discovered that his greatest wealth was not in his bank account, but in the love of an extraordinary woman. The humble cleaning lady discovered that her worth never depended on the approval of others, but on her own integrity and courage. Their wedding 2 years later was simple but full of meaning. It was not the union of opposite worlds, but the fusion of 2 souls that complemented each other. Together, they proved that social differences are only temporary obstacles when there is genuine love, mutual respect, and the courage to fight for what really matters. Their story became legend in Chicago, not as a fairy tale about a cleaning lady who married a millionaire, but as living proof that true love transforms, elevates, and conquers all barriers when 2 people are willing to grow together. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment giving it a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.